Welcome to Between Sundays, a podcast from Union Grove Baptist Church where we take the truths we talk about on Sunday and bring them into everyday life. Because faith isn't just for one day of the week, it's for all of them. I'm your host, David Jane, and each episode we'll sit down with our pastors to unpack how God's Word meets us right where we are, at work, at home, in our relationships, and in the real stuff of life. Thanks for joining us as we learn how to live out our faith between Sundays. All right, guys, welcome to Between Sundays, the podcast by Union Grove, who... I'm going to ditch that, obviously. Okay. All right, guys, welcome to UG Between Sundays, the podcast where we dive deeper into our message from the past Sunday and we make practical applications to our week. This past week, don't lie or don't bear false witness. Did you come across anything interesting before we kind of get into our conversation about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us kind of think that the commandment is just about don't lie. And that is true. That's definitely there. That's definitely implied. That's definitely commanded for us. But the against your neighbor part, that I think that there's something that correlates that between, the neighbor. And it just, I think we forget that segment of the commandment. And so I think that helped me. I think it showed me a lot about what the Lord was meaning behind the commandment.
That's cool. When I think of don't lie, like what I feel like I've struggled with in the past is the bearing false witness against your neighbor part. Mm-hmm. Not that I can recall a specific instance, but I've struggled with presenting someone who wasn't authentic to me. Like growing up, you're a Christian, you go to a Christian school, you go to church, and then there's an image who you present. And this is not a healthy thing at all, but there's an image that you present to other people and then you're like someone totally different. Mm-hmm. And you're not that totally different, but you're not the same person all the time. And that's something I've struggled with, just finding out who I am all the time. And I wouldn't say I have it totally dialed in, but that's something I've definitely had to work on these past 10 years. More, it started in college, I think. But anyway, just being the same person all the time.
Yeah, and I think, we would have called that years ago, compartmentalizing certain aspects of your life. So, you're a Christian when you're here, and then when you're with these people, you're something different, or it's not like you denounce your faith or something, but you kind of just act differently and you portray yourself to be someone that you're not. And that's really, I think, somewhat of the heartbeat behind the commandment, is being truthful and authentic in all things with whoever you're around at that time. So
with this idea of this commandment in mind, are you so there's just to give some context to the question, there are people who are just maybe too blunt with their words and their truth telling. Are you someone who is overly cautious with your words, almost not wanting to offend someone, or do you kind of lay it out there? And I'm not saying you can't be in the middle, but which side do you tend to lean on? Are you overly cautious with your words, or do you just tell someone the truth no matter how much it hurts?
I'm definitely one that is overly cautious with my words, and some of that is my personality type. So if you're familiar with I know one of the most recent ones, the Enneagram or something like that, I'm a 9 on the Enneagram, so I'm a natural wanting to keep the peace type of person. So because of that's the way God's kind of built me, I am always trying to keep the peace. So I'm probably quicker to lie to protect your feelings than I am to just be brutally honest with you.
Yeah.
And so I'm very cautious. In fact, sometimes it's to a fault because I overthink how you will receive something that I'm going to say way too much, and I dwell on it. Yeah. And it's sometimes it takes a lot of wasted mind energy for me because I'm dwelling on exactly how someone's going to receive the most simplistic thing that I'm going to say,
Yeah.
And
I've always been sensitive to how people feel based on how I present myself. Did I do something to offend that person? If I say this, will they take it the wrong way? And how can I communicate in a way that they'll take it the right way, how I mean it. What do you think is the difference? Like you mentioned, lying to protect someone's feelings and lying. So you're not telling the whole truth. We talked about half truths on Sunday, but you give someone an answer that protects their feelings and lying. Yeah. How are they different?
Well, we call a lot of those type of things white lies, right? So, for example, some examples of I think what you're referring to are things like if your wife says, "Does this look good on me? Does it make me look fat?" or something. Like, what are you supposed to say if you feel that it maybe doesn't look good or whatever? Or, for example, like I was thinking through this, our admin at the office, she buzzes me in, "Hey, somebody is here to talk with you," or something, or someone called. And I really am just not. So she says something like that I'm busy or whatever. Was that all the way truthful? Or I mean, it goes like, "Hey, so I made you this casserole, and did you like it afterwards?" And you hated it. Like,
yeah.
What do you say in those cases? So I'm going to be very honest with you, that because of the podcast, right? Got to be honest. I don't have this all figured out. And I've really wrestled with this. I'm kind of like, okay, then what is the answer? If we're supposed to be truthful in all things, then what is the answer? Yeah. And so just to dive a little deep into the question about, and I think this is kind of where you're going with this, like, is it okay to lie, and what's the difference between those two things? I will say that in my experience, the Bible tells us as followers of Christ to be truthful in all things. But I do think that there's a couple of situations in Scripture where lying was almost blessed because like you think of Rahab, prime example. She lied about the spies, things like that. I think there's a couple of instances in Scripture where it's blessed, and the only common denominator that's true in most all of those is that the lie was protecting innocent life from evil pagan people. And that's like true in most all those situations. So our little white lies don't apply. That method of, okay, it might be okay to lie in those cases does not apply. Like, I mean, if you're hiding, like Corey Ten Boom, you're hiding, Jews or something like that to protect their life. Did she sin because she lied? Or what about the missionary that's in Saudi Arabia or somewhere like that that's there on mission work? Like, but they have to say they're there for other reasons. Are they lying and sinning every time that they do that? Yeah. Just in sin. What do you do? Well, they're protecting innocent life, from pagan evil people and stuff. And so I think that applies, but our little type of white lies and stuff don't really apply to that. And so for us, we got to find what do we do? And so my thought is, you never have to use the truth as a weapon. So with your harsh words, don't think like I have to walk around now and just tell everybody like, "Why'd you wear that? Why did you do that? Why do you let them sing at church on Sunday? Why do you, you don't have to use your truth as a weapon." But I think when people ask you directly about certain things, you need to try and be as truthful as you possibly can with them. In the most kindest way that you can. So I don't know if that kind of answers a little bit of your question. I probably went off topic a little bit.
What's harder for you to do? And my guess would be that it's harder for you to tell the truth personally, but it's also equally hard, like, to hear the truth from someone. When I hear that, like, in a marriage, you help each other out, and a lot of times my wife does a great job of kindly presenting the truth, and then I immediately get defensive. And it's just, I mean, that's just like my nature, human nature, I think in a broader sense. But is it harder? Like, so for me, I think it's probably harder to hear the truth, but at the same time, there's just also, I don't want to offend other people, so it's harder to tell the whole truth also. What would you say, where you lean?
Because of my personality type that does take part here, I think sometimes I am quicker to receive truth than give it. not that I want to lie, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
but when it comes to some things, like I'm going to stress personally much more over me having to tell you something that's going to be a very hard truth for you to receive
Yeah.
than I am for you to sit down and tell me something, because I actually enjoy like working on myself. I love that. And so if you have something I can do better, actually naturally my personality, I'm kind of like I want those conversations. Like I love feedback. I love things like that. I don't get really I mean I can get defensive about some things like everybody else, but like I do enjoy feedback. And
That's
I
cool.
enjoy somebody kind of trying to speak into me and trying to help me be a better leader or a better pastor, a better husband, better father, better coach, better whatever. And so those are the things I'm always like looking like, what can I do different? What can I do better? And what I found is most of the time when I ask those questions, people are usually like, oh, you're doing great. And I know that I might be doing well, but I know it's not perfect and I have areas to improve in. I think people are naturally afraid to be honest and tell the truth a lot of times, and
Yeah.
that's probably because people don't like to hurt people's feelings, which is good, and we're supposed to be kind. But I also think we got to be truth telling as well.
There's this guy, his name is Alex Hormozy. I don't know if you would have come across him in your podcasting,
Mm-hmm.
listening. He's basically a business guy, but he also gives advice on how to do better in kind of any area. But he says one of the best skills to learn is to have the hard conversations with people. Like the kind of conversation where whether it's you got to just go in and anyway, it's something that I've kind of taken to heart, and it's like, okay. And then he's like, once you have the hard conversation, you almost kind of get addicted to it because of the feeling afterwards. And you're like, wow, it's like an inner triumph. So then you're like, what other hard conversation can I have? And it's just, it was interesting hearing kind of his storytelling about it. But I think that kind of ties into not shying away from like, if this is constructive to this person, I think it would be for their betterment in the end. And not that you're the moral like authority over that, but especially if you interact with that person, which kind of leads us into like the gossip, like what's gossip, what's not. And that's kind of what I was thinking about as I was saying that, because you don't want to approach someone about and be gossipy, but
Well, let
you
me
hit
say
that
one thing before
also.
we jump into the gossip conversation. I do think like when you receive truth and having those hard conversations, I think everybody needs those in their life. I'm having to learn that in my position that I'm at now as
Sure.
pastor and president of our school. It's like that's not my natural tendency. I mean, it's a tough area in my life that I have to have a lot. But here's what I'll tell you: you also, I think, have to be given the authority in someone's life to give and to have those hard conversations. So, in other words, like, I don't need to be going up to people who aren't asking me for help or
Right.
improvement and just feeling like I am that authority in their life. No, you have to be given that, and that's a special place to be. And so I think that's an important aspect that some people that are brutally honest forget. It's kind of like you weren't given that authority to be that brutally honest with somebody.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
true.
why are you going out and seeking opportunities to speak your mind into someone else's life if they've not given that space to you, you
Hmm.
know? So,
And yeah, that's true, because someone can. I just thought of a story you told earlier where someone not really their place to say something to this person, and they said it, and you do have to lay out like if I work at a company and my manager's manager has done something, that's not really my place to march into his office and say, hey, look, you need to get this straight, or
yep.
I'm out. And then there's just weird.
Yep.
And as Christians, that wouldn't be like God lays out that we should still be respectful of authority,
Yep.
even if we don't agree. And it's
Right.
the whatever country we live in, be respectful of that authority. And that's a whole nother
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah.
So into gossip, and I'm glad you hit on gossip because it's a tool that I think Satan has really empowered churches with these last 50, 60 years. And it's come it's like the most precious things that we have access to. I think of talking to God. What a great privilege, the king the guy who created everything, we could just go right to him. And that's even been twisted and perverted to where, well, can you pray for this person because she's doing XYZ?
Yeah.
And it's, why does it feel so easy to do when it does so much damage, do you think?
You have to peel back the layers of people's motives when they gossip. And I truly believe, and most people aren't willing to peel back the layers of their motives.
Mm-hmm.
So they never get deep enough to really give you the reason why they're saying certain things. I really believe that one of the reasons why, when you peel back the motive, is because people feel if I can say something bad about somebody else that's not present, I can somewhat come out as the hero of this conversation. And the ultimate problem that mankind has always struggled with is pride and ego. And that's what we want. And we want to be respected. We want to be looked at as having it all together. And so I really believe one of the deepest motives, but like I said, not many people are willing to peel back the layers to get down there. But I guarantee you the reason people are so easy to gossip about people is because they're trying to be the hero of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And they feel if I can put down people, I can uplift myself. And so I think that's one thing, but that's a deep way of thinking about it because I get nobody's willing to peel back those layers to get that deep. So, but really, I don't know why it's so easy, but I've been around people that, I mean, all they do is want to talk about everybody else when they're together. They can't even have normal conversation about life and about our kids and about our families and about whatever we're doing at the time or sports or whatever. They have to be saying something about somebody else in a negative way.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like we've become it's become so normalized that we almost just expect that. And I think we sometimes say, well, if what we're saying is true, it's not gossip, but it's still gossip. Like, because if it's not necessary for me to tell you somebody else's problems when they're not there, then that's gossip. If I'm going to paint a negative light, this person over here, paint them in a negative light to you to where your opinion of them is going to change because of what I'm saying, then that's gossip.
Mm-hmm.
And we really need to stop that. I can't stand it. And I hope that our church would be a church that doesn't participate in that.
There's also this element and when we were talking about prayer requests, I thought of this, but of one upping someone. Like there's church aside, there's those people you've inevitably come to in life where you telling a story and well I did this and that's a little bit better than what you did, in their own way. And I feel like when you get to prayer requests, you're like, oh, can you pray for my son? He scraped his knee. Well, can you pray for my cousin? Well, he fell and broke his arm. Well, can you pray for my grandma's nephew, who fell and he's in the hospital having surgery? Well, can you pray for, and they're in ICU, and it's like they get more distant, but also more severe. And it's, I don't know if that plays into the last 50 years of people's prayer request time or not, but there is that thing I think that people struggle with the attention is on me at some point. I don't know.
No, but I do think to your point, I don't know if that's always true, but here's what I'll tell you is I do think that we want people to care about our need more than everybody else's need.
That's a good way of putting it.
That's just what it is. It's because at the core of who we are, mankind, the flesh, we are selfish, prideful human beings. And so when it comes to this, we gossip because we want to be the hero of the story, right? We are constantly wanting people to look at us out of the utmost respect. And sometimes we feel that the way to earn that respect is by putting everybody below us through gossip. Mm. And through ways like that, one-upping certain things. I mean, it's true not just in prayer requests, it's true in stories. You ever been with people that it's like, oh man, you'll never believe what happened to me today. I was in traffic, this, that, and then it's like, oh man, that's wild. Guess what happened to me today? And it's like this bigger, elaborate thing. And they just can't deal with the fact that, like, okay, like let's just be like, man, that was a tough day for you. I don't have to interject myself to be the biggest hero of this whole conversation.
Yeah. That kind of plays into like sometimes I've with Morgan I've had to do that. I've not had to do that. Like because I want
careful,
to
David,
you want to just relate. And so
Yeah.
I would just circle around and make it about me when really I should just be listening to her.
Mm-hmm.
And she's mentioned that to me as a way of like kindly correcting. This is how she's like just like I feel like you're making it about you. And I on my end I'm sure that's in the back of my mind and wired into me, but I'm just like trying to relate with her. But really we're like husband and wife. So I should just say that stinks. Like, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And
we all struggle with that because I'm right there with you. And, I don't apply this near as much as I should in my life and in my marriage and with my kids and with people. But Stephen Covey said something about the conversations that we would all be better off as human beings if we would learn to listen with the intent to understand people rather than the intent to respond. And so a lot of times, like every time somebody's talking to me, I'm already thinking about what I'm about to say.
Yeah.
And it's like, they're still talking, Josh. Listen to understand them. Don't listen just for the sake of I'm about to interject. And the moment that there's a brief silence, I'm saying something. It's kind of like we're just terrible about that. We don't know how to listen to people. And some of that's just the noise of the world that we live in and the busyness and the phones and the constant information overload that we're receiving. But it's like if we learn to just sit there, relax, and listen to the person that's talking with the intent to understand them, we would all be better off in society, in my opinion.
And it's kind of a Christian thing to do as opposed to just responding and engaging in conversation. You're like engaging with the person.
Yep.
And that's ultimately, the soul is in the person, and that's what we're after. This is kind of the thing that I wanted to talk about, and I just kind of sent you our topics and stuff, but this is a big one, I think, and it's just so little. It's a very white lie that you might tell when you say, "How are you doing?" "I'm good. How are you?" And you're not really doing good. There was a lady that at our church at Union Grove, and it was before I heard the message. So it was just cool to take this experience and be able to apply it afterwards. But she was walking by. "Hey," I was like, "How are you doing?" "Well, my back's hurting and I kind of have a cough and I can't really shake it, but I'm here." And I was like, "That's great. You are here." But I was just cool. It was neat that our message was on, don't lie, don't bear false witness. And she was truthful. And I've heard that discussed before, that just say something like, "Oh, I'm okay. I've been better." Or the Dave Ramsey, "better than I deserve." That kind of thing. But I just thought that was an interesting application that I could make from a person, that I had before the message. And it just got me thinking that I think Christians, it just goes back to having to present something that you're not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's a tough one, and I think circumstances are different because because of my personality type, usually struggle to share when I'm not having a great day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so I'm usually going to fake it till I make it. That's just how I'm wired because I don't want to put my burden on you. So as a peacemaker by personality, I never want to put my burden on you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be over the top. I'm good. I'm going to have it together, but I want to hear about your burden and I want to take your burden off. Okay. And don't think that's just super spiritual. That's just some of the way that God has just wired me as a human being. And so for me, I struggle with that. I think some of it's circumstantial. And so, like, I don't think we need to just walk around all the time like that. I think you can say things like, like, oh, I've had better days, but God is still good, and be truthful in what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And so if like your life is spiraling out of control, and I mean, you are just, the day couldn't get worse, and things like that. Like, I think it's okay to ask for prayer and to be honest and stuff like that. And I think you should be with people. But I think the premise is, don't try to perceive to people that you're one thing when you're not. And that's kind of what the premise of this whole episode is about, is like, look, we don't want to portray ourselves as people that we aren't.
Mm-hmm.
And so be as truthful as you can be. But sometimes we need to ask ourselves, I think, the hardest thing for me in this whole subject is, I do think that there's sometimes where information's not necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to figure out a way to be truthful, but also you don't have to share everything.
Yeah. You don't, like, if you're in church and someone's kind of kindly asking, like, how you doing? You don't want to be like, whoa, come up, buckle up.
Exactly, right. And so, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like, sometimes there's a place for it, and I'm not saying that you lie in those moments, but I am saying, like, is some of the things that we're wanting to say necessary,
Mm-hmm.
And that's the question that I would ask.
I think with the younger generations, so I'm a millennial technically, and then there's two generations below me, like Alpha, X, whatever they are. I should probably know, having brought that topic up. But the kids younger than me, and adults younger than me, I'm getting old. The thing that I've heard the most is that they crave authenticity.
Yeah.
And I think that could speak, if you yourself are authentic, older people are going to recognize that. But I just think it has something to do with the way that media has gone, and that legacy media is kind of spiraling down, because you don't get these clips anymore. That's all it used to be, was clips. And now with podcasting having really taken off the last 10 years, you get more of someone, and they can't be on for 2.5, 3 hours. That was the talking point of the last presidential election, was that President Trump made all these podcasting runs, and his opponent didn't. She did one, and it was she got the questions, they had editing rights, they had location rights, and all these other people were like, look, if you care about my platform, which is way more reach than you can get on Fox News or CNN, then you need to come to me.
Yeah.
And so authenticity, I think, plays a lot into, especially people that are learning, that are aging into vote, that are the next generation of taxpayers for their intents and purposes.
To your point, I did hear something that was really interesting, and this is so true. I can't remember who said this or whatever, but it was somebody on some news station. They said, you can like Donald Trump, or you could hate Donald Trump. And it does not matter. We like or hate him for different reasons, okay? But here's what the person said. And this person was an anti-Donald Trump guy. And I cannot remember for the life of me who it was. But they said, but one thing everybody can equally agree on is that he is who he is. He's authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you might not like him.
Right.
And you might not like him for who he is. And that's fair. But here's what I'm going to tell you. It's like, he is who he is. And that might make you angry, or it might make you happy, but you can't deny that he's an authentic guy. He's just who he is.
Yeah.
And that frustrates me sometimes. And I'm just like, that's what I'm saying. And I think that's what people want. They want you to be authentic. And I think that there's also, take it out of politics for a little bit and go into like church. That's why a lot of people question church, because most churches have terrible stories about a pastor who was one thing, on the platform, and was a different thing off the platform. And like, that's like, it's just plagued churches, and so we have to be authentic, we have to be real, we have to be transparent, and we have to be truthful.
Yeah.
And the ninth commandment, to summarize that, is a call to truthfulness. That's really what it is. And it's a call to value truth and to value others and to speak the truth to others in love. So.
That's good. That wraps up the episode perfectly, I think. Guys, if you have questions about anything we've talked about, DJAYNE, I'll throw it on the screen at ugbconline.com. Mail in questions, mail in topics you want to talk about. But we will always talk about this past Sunday that we had an episode on. We'll occasionally do a bonus episode every now and then. We've had one on Christian nationalism that I think was very relative to the time that we've just had. But yeah, we'll catch y'all next week.